Great, thank you. So as many of you may have possibly heard recently, the healthcare and IT organizations have recently merged to create a new organization called Technology and Digital Solutions. A big change, and boy, let me tell you, there was absolutely no problems and everybody was perfectly happy with the entire process. No, I'm joking. Actually, a lot of really great people were involved in this and they've done a lot of really fantastic things. But it really got me thinking. Change is incredibly complex, and what are some factors that we can keep in mind to ensure that organizational change goes well? 5 things bubble to the top. The first one is vision, or how we deal with vision. The second one is communication. The third is how we deal with ambiguity. The fourth is how we empower individuals. And the fifth, and I think most important, is how we deal with culture. So when it comes to vision, it's not necessarily this kind of entrepreneurial view of vision that we hear about here in Silicon Valley, right? It's not the great founder with this North Star and everybody heading towards it on a leap of faith, hoping for the big IPO. What it really is slowing down and thinking about story, because ultimately our organizations are a story, and it is our jobs as participants and leaders to understand what our organization does and how to literally write that story. And this is something I really enjoy doing, and I'm happy to talk with anybody after the conference about. But here's the thing, if your version of that organizational story only has a happy ending, you're not doing your job right. What we need to do is look at the future. What is your organization? What does it want to do? Is it a protagonist? Yes, it is. What is it coming against that's going to stop it from getting to its goals? There's your antagonists. Who are your friends and allies that you meet along the way? What are the plot points? What are the difficulties? What's the climax of that story? And then ultimately, how do you wrap the entire thing up? And when you go through this entire process, you can really understand your pain points and the things that you need to address when it comes to change. So very quick story. Some time ago, my group at University IT moved everybody over from Zimbra, if you remember that, to Office 365. And they did such a great job that we decided to throw them a surprise party. So everybody got an invitation without an agenda to a required meeting that you couldn't blue jeans into. And then we just sat on that for a couple weeks. And as you can imagine, people's minds went where they would. And when the entire CIO council showed up with a big bucket full of beer and food, there was shocked silence, and then some 4-letter words yelled from the back of the room. It wasn't quite the reaction that we'd hoped for. And the lesson behind this was, rather than how little can we communicate in a situation, we should be asking ourselves, how much can I communicate in a situation? Because people will fill in the blanks when there's ambiguity, and frequently it won't go in the right direction. Coming to ambiguity, how do we deal with that? Do we give lots of information? Do we get a little bit? Do we dole it out bit by bit? Well, I'm going to say this. It's not necessarily up to sort of leadership and the communicators. What we need to do instead is to own that ambiguity and then put that out to the individuals who are having change enacted upon them, because we don't want them to feel like it's enacted upon them. We want to give people their power back. We want to empower them and allow them to have a say in the process. Admit, hey, we don't know everything. We'd like to include you with that. Let's sit down, do some working sessions. You can literally fill in that ambiguity with something positive and substantive. Empowerment. We need to empower people, of course. So if leadership does too much in a change initiative, they're going to be accused of micromanaging. If they do too little, they're going to be accused of not thinking about things. It's kind of a lose-lose situation. What has to happen is that leadership needs to empower people to make the change from the ground up. So if I am in a new organization and there's a purchasing process that I think is onerous or takes too long, and I want to change that, I need leadership on both sides to say, hey, I'm going to help you manage up and actually transform that. That's the role, and that's what I need. Then we come to culture. Peter Drucker says culture eats strategy for breakfast. If any of you have been through ITLP, you've heard them say culture is king. This is really true. We need to ensure, sorry, I just saw that 1 minute light go off, super distracting. Culture will derail the best laid plans. Quick story, Amazon.com took over Whole Foods Market. Amazon.com is known as a very tight corporate culture. Balanced scorecards that are often used to fire people. Hotlines that you can use to report people who aren't being efficient. Versus Whole Foods, it's a face-to-face. Manager empowerment, it's egalitarian. It didn't work. People were weeping when this happened. Context is king is what I'm going to say. Neither of these cultures are bad or good, but ultimately we need to think about the context in which they exist, and we can't apply one willy-nilly to the other. I'm just about out of time, so I just want to say this. We need to slow down. Context is key. Be okay with trial and error. Make sure you get buy-in, and change can be good. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and there's my email. Thank you.